In this video, I want to talk about different ways to create a 4-patch. Your basic 4-patch, it's going to look something like this piece right here. So it's got 4 pieces to it. This is one of the squares that I got from the Tennessee Valley Shop Hop. And this incorporates 5 4-patches. This is going to become a finished 12-inch square, so that means each row needs to be a finished 4-inch, which means we need an unfinished 4.5-inch block. Okay? So to begin with, and because there are so many different ways to do it, we're going to look at 3. I have got some 5-inch squares. I have 2.5-inch squares, and I have some 2.5-inch strips. So let's just go ahead and start with the 2.5-inch squares. So I'm at my machine. We're going to turn it on. I've got my corresponding colors. The first thing that I want to do is change my stitch. I like a piecing stitch. And I've got 2 options. I like the one that goes over to the right hand side. And for doing little squares and for my strips, I also like using my piecing foot. So I'm just going to drop my standard foot off, and I'm going to insert my piecing foot. I'm going to get right side to right side of my blue and my pink. Drop my needle and just kind of stitch away. And I'm kind of weird, I always knot it. And I'm going to do the other one. It always likes me to have to readjust a little bit before it gets going good. Working with the little pieces, I find to be a little difficult. Alright, so we've got our pieces. We need to press them. And I have a way that I like to press them. And of course, you know there is a difference between pressing and ironing. When I'm working with my squares, I do like to press them opposite directions. And I like to press towards the darker color. So, I'm going to press. Going to press. Okay. I'm also a pinner. I didn't used to be, but I am now. And part of the reason why I like to press it the way I did is it gives me a nice way of feeling to make sure that I've got it jutted up there. I think they call this budding. Right. So you can see, oop, don't have it. Not there yet. You adjust it to where you fit the one seam into the other seam. And that should be just about perfect. Again, like I said, I like to pin, so I'll hold that nice and tight. Try not to stab myself. And because I tend to let things slip, I even pin the sides. And that's just me. So, with pieces this small, I always move my thread out so I can get it nicely under there. Remove the pin so I don't sew over it. And we have got a nice 4-patch. Corners are meeting up very nicely. Now there's one more step with creating a 4-patch, and that is squaring it up. So let's do another quick press. So again, we want this to be 4.5 inches square. So I'm going to take my 2.5 inch ruler. I'm going to put 2.25 inch right along the seam. And I also like to measure in for the cross seam too. So you notice I'm not quite there. Take my rotary cutter and even her up. And I learned the hard way that if you have uneven blocks, you're going to have an uneven finished piece. Your corners will not match up, your seams won't match up, and it can still be very pretty, but it just won't be quite as finished. Again, I'm at 2.25 inches at the center. Two and a quarter inches there along the center seam. And you've got a perfect 4.25 inch 4-patch to be a finished 4-inch block. Well, you saw that was a little bit of trouble. We're going to put this one aside, and I want to show you another method. This method is going to include my strips. So I'm going to take a strip of each color. Okay. I'm just going to cut it in half. Just along the finished seam line. Now I've already sewn one together. And I want to also point out that with my piecing foot, you've got a nice 1/4 inch seam. Very nice. Don't press this outward yet. Okay, so we've got our pink and our blue. And now what we're going to do is cut. So these are my 2.5 inch strips sewn together with a 1/4 inch seam. I want to even that up a little bit. So, even that up. And I'm funny, I have certain ways that I like to cut, so forgive me, work with me here. 2.5 inch ruler, so I just mark it along the end there. Cut. And I cut. And I've got my 2 sections ready to go. Again, let's press them towards the blue. And we'll take them again, shutting them up center to center. You can really feel that. I wish y'all were here with me so you could feel how well that fits in there. So you know you've got a nice matchup. Okay. Goes back to the machine. And we are just going to stitch that down. Nope. Let's press that back in. Very nice. We'll square it up again like we did with the first one. Very important. Like I said, I learned the hard way. If you skip this step, that's great. I like to incorporate it. I've learned that my pieces are much more finished. Now the third way, we're going to take our 5-inch squares, going along my little work area, and of course half of 5 is 2.5. So I'm going to take my 2.5-inch ruler and I'm going to draw a line with a pencil, just slightly down the center. Take my pink and my blue, 5-inch squares, and let's go to the machine. Now for this, I like to go back to my regular foot. So, quick pop off, pop back on. I also like to go back to my regular center stitch. Okay, so I like my center stitch. And I'll kind of stabilize a little bit so it doesn't slip around too much. Again, I have learned to become a pinner. Now this time, I am going to stitch with the right side of my foot going over the line. Okay. So there's my line, and there's my foot. And I am just going to sew down on one side of the line. I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to sew down the other line. Alright. So let's kind of press that down a little bit. Just a very quick run over. Now we're going to take our ruler and our rotary cutter, and we are going to cut this. Again, I want you to point out, I want to point out this nice 1/4 inch line, this 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to cut along the pencil line. Hold your ruler down firmly. We're going to slice down. So we're going to press this again, and this time I like to press it down the middle. So I'm going to kind of finger press this down a little bit. So there's one. there's 2. Nice. Very nice. Now, we're going to draw another line. Make sure you can see this. Again, it's a 5-inch square, so we're going to just kind of draw it down the center. Pencil. Okay. Now this time, you're going to have the blue on the top, pink on the top. Make sure you match up your seam lines. Okay. And pin it real good. And you can see if you look up, it should be a good one. Let's do it this way. And do another one on the other side. And again, I'm kind of a, see, I moved. Not good. So let's kind of reposition. Because I want it to be, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I kind of like it to be as close as it can be. And I bet you can guess what you're going to do again. That's right, you're going to sew along the line, giving a 1/4 inch seam along each line. I'm going to do that real quick. Again, I'm positioning my foot. We're going to flip it right along the line, sew it down. We're going to remove our pins. Quick press, just to make sure it's nice and flat. Come back to our ruler and our rotary cutter. I'm going to cut along the line. Okay, so we'll open it up. And you'll see I missed just a smidge. Let's see how I did on this one. Again, I missed a smidge on that one. Alright, and after I have opened up and pressed, where I took my 5-inch squares, sewed them together, I've pressed, and I even have a little 4 patch on the back. And again, I'm going to kind of measure it from the center at the 2 1/4 inch spot. Two 1/4 inch at the center. And just trimming off any rough edges. And we've got ourselves a nice 4-inch block. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4.5 inches minus your seams. Become a 4-inch finished block.